So, to start off, here she is. She is on 13,500 miles, and that's within a 12-month period. So I've done over 1,000 miles each month randomly. Mostly ridden off-road, I want to say 75% off-road with 25 on-road. Done as much as I can to remain on the dirt. It's hard in the UK, but we make it work. Yeah, let's talk about the things that I have had to replace while I've owned the Tenere World Raid. So overall, this has been an absolutely solid bike. No real issues whatsoever. The only thing which I've had to do over time is replace the clutch. It had a recall at about 4,000 miles, no one's really at fault there. Got that replaced. In 2,000 miles after that, it needed replacing again. So paid for a new clutch. That's been going fine and has been for 7,000 miles. It remains completely okay. One of the other things that I've had to replace since I've owned the bike, and you might notice it if you're keen, is that this panel here has been replaced. As you can see from here, it took a slide down the road in Wales. I lent my bike to a friend to go on a long journey. He accidentally had a spill on one of the corners. Most of the stuff on this side here was just torn off and cracked and broken. So we've replaced that. Looks good as new. It's just missing the sticker, which is on the other side and not this side. So maybe I'll have to get myself a sticker kit in the coming weeks, months, years. See how long it takes me to get round to it. But as you can see, the engine protection and all the guards and stuff did really well. I feel like I resprayed this. You can see a few little marks on there. But the tank was completely untouched from that accident. So that's a bonus, along with all the rear, to be fair. I had these racks off at the time. And there's no damage on there whatsoever. So I was quite happy with that. And again, it's my friend's fault. We'll blame him. But it was all sorted and paid out for, I think, 120 odd pounds to replace that and some of the engine guarding stuff as well. So it wasn't too expensive to purchase the replacements. One thing that I did have to replace is, there's a sheep. One thing that I did have to replace was this rear disc. The stock one with the stock pads, it just chewed through it within about 5,000-6,000 miles. I didn't notice that the pads had worn down so quickly over time, so chewed up the disc, put a new disc on it, new pads. It's had Galfers on it, and they've been really good. The braking power feels a lot more than the OEM stuff, so I'm really chuffed with the Galfer braking system. So those of you with keen vision will realise that it's just started screwing it down. So this gives me a perfect opportunity to talk about one of the things that might be a little sketchy. It might not be to do with this bike, to be fair. It could just be in general. But when you've got knobblies fitted, I think with all the weight up high, as is on this Tenere, especially when it's full of fuel, and you're pitching into a corner, you feel it. You really do feel it gets a bit slippy. Which is okay. Bikes in the wet are, not supposed to be the most stable thing in the world, but at the same time, wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't so bad? And I have owned other bikes, obviously. Whoop. And this, by far, is the slippiest in the rain, and it's probably due to the knobblies, but it's something to consider if you go in from maybe a road going touring or sports bike like I did onto an adventure bike, is you need to consider the fact you can't push it as far. And the sheer reason for that is, of course, because it's completely different. You're on different tyres, seating position's different. You can't throw your weight around to influence the bike as much as you can on a lighter sports bike, I'd say. So something to consider if you were thinking about buying something like this is, you know, it isn't sporty. It's made for off-road, so the road riding aspect of it, while it's good and it handles everything, and you know, in the dry I can't really fault it. When it gets wet, it gets slippy. And apparently today it's decided to flash flood by the looks of it. Nice and soggy. Oh, feel that sting hitting the side of my neck. I will talk about one of the good points of this in the rain, which is if you got your legs tucked right into the tank and you know you're steaming forward and it's not raining sideways, your legs stay relatively dry, and that's because the tank's kind of enveloped sideways on the World Raid edition. On the standard one, I don't think you get that as much. But you got these two bits of plastic down here, and you got the twin tanks, and it keeps your legs dry. Of course, I was stationary for a little bit too long. So, 13,500 miles, most of it off-road. How's it handled? Absolutely phenomenally. Just like all the press releases would say it would, it's been a good off-road bike, and it's been a good first off-road bike. It is big, it's an ADV, so it's not exactly something fantastic to learn on. Adam Reimann did a video on this recently, actually, where he basically directly pointed at me in his comment section and went, "You're doing it wrong." I was going to leave a comment on it, and I might still do, and see whether I can get him to comment back on me. Because his point was, if you're going to learn to ride off-road, you should do it on a light little dirt bike. Which is all well and good being said, but I think other people share my mindset of they don't want multiple bikes. And also, if you don't live in Australia, where you leave your front door and you're straight on a sandy playground, then you've got to suffer with miles and miles of tarmac. And you know, obviously the laws here in the UK are quite strict with what can and can't be ridden on the road. And if you want to take an actual dirt bike, you've got to go and get it like authorised and approved, and then checked out at an MOT centre, and then you can get it registered for the road, and it all incurs costs up until that point. And then of course you get a license plate, and you know, I think you can ride without turn signals, but then if it gets dark you got to go home. So his argument might work really well if you live somewhere where there's lots of dirt tracks and trails, or you can just head straight up into the mountains or whatever. But in England, and he's ridden in England, you haven't really got that. You've got to do the road miles to get over to the trails. So there's thought to consider, and I hope people agree with me on that. And so to go back to the original point is ADV bikes in countries where you can't just hop on a trail are perfect. And I think there's merit to learning everything that you need to do on a bigger bike, on a bike that you'd like to use, rather than learning it on something smaller and then trying to transpose that across to the bigger bikes. He made a fair comment about instincts, and it makes a hell of a lot of sense. You know, I've started picking up the instincts for where I need to put my body when I'm riding on like gravel and such to keep the bike stable and to lean it, and it's not something that comes immediately naturally, but at the same time I believe those instincts could be taught by a school, and people should go and get training, and I'm considering going and getting training, because while I'm learning doing things on my own, doing training and stuff would be a good addition to the tool set that I already have. So, 13,500 miles. Do I have any regrets? No. But there's a caveat to that, and it's always in hindsight, and you'll never know it until you get there and you go, should have done that. What I should have done is waited a year and got the 2025 model, because they've made some good improvements. That being said, they don't do a World Raid in it yet. They might still do. Unconfirmed. I need to talk to my man at Yamaha to sort of find out what's going on with that. But they've made some major improvements. You know, the dash is still pretty good. The ABS button works as it should on the 25 models. So yeah, should have waited, you know, but who knew? Who knew that there'd be a refresh coming in a year? I guess the guys at Yamaha, but too late for me. Not really upset about it. People ask me why I went with a World Raid rather than the standard one. Simple factor, it's the looks. It just looks better in my opinion. Having the extra range is a nice bonus. I'm gonna go down here. Yeah, having the extra range, nice little bonus. Doesn't really need it, and quite often if I go and do some off-road riding, I'll only fill half the fuel tank, which is loosely give me 16 litres, which is, I think, what the standard T7 has. But longer trips, you don't have to make as many stops to fill up. It's quite nice. No complaints about that. Yeah, it was more of a looks thing, really. It was a nice bonus to have the Öhlins suspension fitted. Obviously, you get a steering damper with the World Raid version, so that's quite nice to have, especially on the road. Try and wiggle it. So, you know, happy with that. If I did have to go with a different brand of bike, Aprilia's Touareg 660 is, I think, probably the next nicest contender for this. Just looks good, you know, you see them throwing them around just like the T7s. They've got a little bit more power, I believe, and less weight, and it's slightly lower, which should be useful because I've got short little legs on this thing and can't really reach the floor that great. So yeah, Touareg 660 would probably be my, if Yamaha didn't exist, I'd go with the Aprilia. Similar price point to this, as far as I'm aware, with picking up a new one. Yeah. That CP2 engine sound is just phenomenal though. I really love it. Such a nice note, throaty. So, in my 1 year of riding this, would I recommend it to other people who are thinking of getting an adventure bike? That depends. If you want to do off-road, I'd say yeah. I love this, and I'd absolutely say, you know, go get one for yourself. But I kind of impose the, do you think you want the World Raid, or would you be happier with the lighter, skinnier, lower version? Which all sounds bad, but actually, if you're riding one of these off-road, all of those three things I've just said would be really nice to have. I've definitely made it more difficult for myself on this thing. But if someone was like, I love a World Raid, I really want one, I'd say go for it. Only complaint as well. I feel like I've said only complaint and I've said 4 different things. Is that the spokes still get really rusty. Very quickly, it didn't take long at all. I think it was literally within 2 months the spokes had rusted on this. It's a bit of a letdown on a brand new bike. I do want to get them changed for stainless steel, but at the same time, the paint rubbing off on the rear rim you know, my own fault for just churning it through mud. But the paint coming off the rear rim makes me just want to get a whole new set of rims, and I'll get stainless steel spokes then, but that's a couple of grand that I don't really feel like spending on this for something that doesn't really have any benefit whatsoever. So the Tenere, it handles 2 up perfectly fine. The passenger seat is a little uncomfortable, shall we say. Found a nice cheap £6 modification, which is just to roll up a bath floor mat towel and then make the missus sit on that. Part of the reason why it hurts so much is because I've got these bags on, and there's clips that go over the seat. That probably doesn't help, but if you're going 2 up, you know, on holiday, you want to have all the luggage, so, you know, can't really get rid of them. For day trips and stuff, you can take the bags off, and I'm sure it'll be just fine. So, some closing thoughts for the video. Am I happy with the purchase? Yeah. Am I happy with the bike? Of course. Yeah. Would I go back and do anything different? No, not really. I'm super happy with this, like I said. Would not trade this for anything that's on the market currently. That being said, if someone comes out with something similar to this, reliable, maybe a little bit more powerful, a little bit lower, I consider it.